Welcome back into One Winning Pod. All right, we just finished up talking about the Ravens' performance against the Bills. Unfortunately, that game was in a loss. Ravens are 2-2 to start the season. Really don't want to start 2-3, but we got a dramatic game Sunday night. Last year against the Bengals, we'll just say those games happened. And we've got back with us Justin, our Bengals friend. You probably are our closest friend who's a Bengals fan.
Yes. I'm a lot of people's closest friend to a Bengals fan, honestly.
Oh, man. Well, it's great to have you back on. Feel free to get your dunking out of the way now, because we're going to be talking about 2022 and not 2021. So I guess just to, start off the bat, everyone who's been listening to the pod knows who you are, knows your deal. So I guess we can just cut right to the chase. Have you lived off the high yet of the Bengals season last year? And how's the reality of this year looking right now?
I would say I'm still living off that high. I really wasn't too disappointed in the outcome. It was a good game, regardless, and just for a Bengals fan getting there, that's the thing. This year opened up badly, but I try to remember that Burrow, he had a couple of really bad games last year, and this year he just got him out of the way ahead of time. So I'm hoping that the ship has been righted, and at least compared to the rest of the division, I thought at first, like, oh no, here comes fourth place again. But we both got some things to disparage about our teams, and it's a weird situation. So I'm optimistic though.
That's good, man. I wish we had as many fans as you on the Ravens side. It's been so much griefing over the last. I mean, we just had a therapy session before this, but like, my goodness, there's so many people who just like want to blow it all up. It's only game 4.
Oh,
come on.
Yeah, really. And both the games that you took the L on, I think you were one break away from flipping it the other way. So it's the NFL.
Yeah, that is what makes it both hopeful and frustrating at the same time. But I mean, in some ways, I think that's going to make this game even more exciting, because both teams are coming in 500, have had some promising things to start the season, some other things that, like you said, they want to shore it up. And one of the things that everyone's going to be watching is the matchup between the Ravens secondary and those Bengals wide receivers. Obviously, the Ravens banged up in the first game of the season last year, banged up even more in the second game, which isn't to take away what the Bengals receivers did, because the Bengals receivers and Joe Burrow certainly put together some good plays in those games. But the Ravens secondary, for the most part, is going to be a pretty good strength. We got to have Marcus Williams there. We got in free agency. Chuck Clark is there. Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters will be back, and we'll have to see how this matchup goes. And I do want to talk a little bit about Chase, because I know this well because he was the top pick in one of my fantasy drafts, our league we have with the other Ravens podcasts. And outside of week 1, he's kind of let me down. Just hasn't, at least from a fantasy perspective, hasn't really been doing what I was expecting. From your perspective, has this just been a combination of defenses focusing more in on this guy because he had that monster rookie year, or is there just some timing off right now between him and Burrow?
I think it's definitely the defensive focus. He's had a decent number of receptions, but they've all been short yardage. Last year he had that, but he always had 1 or 2 deep balls a game. And I think the defenses that the Bengals have faced for the most part have been focusing on the deep ball, pushing the corners more toward the boundary, because Chase doesn't need much sideline to get open, so they're really putting the corners out there to keep him pinned down as much as possible. And it's weird. It's not like I can say Burrow's been missing him. There just really haven't been a lot of deep attempts, which watching all the Bengals games last year, every 5th pass was just going deep, and this year only a couple of attempts. Burrow just sees him getting pinned down and looks elsewhere in a hurry. So that's the key to your defense is just keeping Chase, from being wide open. And Depending on, I'm assuming Humphrey's going to be covering him most of the time, probably.
I hope so. Yeah, I mean he's been he's been the lockdown guy the first couple of weeks. I mean they might switch off a little bit, but I would hope that he'd be the primary guy. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I assume he won't have too tough a time, as long as he's as fast. Was he hurt all year last year or just during the second half? I forget.
Yeah.
Humphrey was out the second half. Yeah, he had the pec injury against the Steelers.
Right.
Yeah, so he was out for the second matchup.
Marcus Peters was out the whole year last year for the Ravens. Humphrey was in the first matchup, and he was as much to blame as anyone for the game Chase had. Chase definitely did get him a couple times pretty badly, but yeah, part of that, last year with the injuries to Peters and some other players on the defense early on, it really limited what Humphrey could do. The Ravens really had to make sure that he wasn't giving anything up, wasn't gambling as much, and we're already seeing. Just 4 games into the season, we're seeing Marlon Humphrey jump back to the All-Pro self that we've had seen for the previous seasons of his career, and he's been stellar. Peters has been pretty good to come back. I'd say he's given up. He gave up that touchdown against Miami. Gave a couple plays against Buffalo, but yeah, Humphrey's just been locked down, and I think that he's going to be ready for this matchup. Does that mean he's going to shut out Chase? I don't think so, but I think it should go a lot better for him and the secondary as a whole in this game.
The other big thing that I think will be helpful this year, Marcus Williams has been really good at the free safety role. Brought him over. Just incredible closing speed of just something that we really haven't had in the free safety probably since Earl Thomas. Brandon Stevens was sort of in that role last year. Not really that kind of guy. He's our third corner right now. But I think if they want to put Marcus over on that side to kind of help shadow him or bracket him, whatever they want to do, I think that will be really interesting. I think to watch to see, if he really helps kind of take Chase away.
With a quarter of the season down, though, I would anticipate the offense trying something new to get him deep because it's pretty glaring. So, although they've been able to win without going deep all the time, but I would anticipate some changes. So we'll see.
I think one of the other big talking points that we love to hear your thoughts on is the Bengals went out and invested heavily in the offseason in their offensive line, getting Leo Collins, offensive tackle, Alex Kappa, guard, and Ted Karras, center. And the early returns are not all that great. It seems like the line seems to be still having issues. Burrow's still getting sacked. Joe Mixon's having not as explosive a year as some were hoping for, I guess. So what are your thoughts on the offensive line? Have you seen glimmers of hope, or are you thinking like they brought in a bunch of new personnel, but it might be the same problem?
In aggregate, it looks pretty bad, but it kind of went back to the first 2 weeks where they had 7 sacks and 6 sacks respectively. Against Miami, there's only 1. I think part of the problem was signing almost an entirely new offensive line, only 1 starter returning from last year, and none of them, except the rookie, played any snaps in the preseason. So when you're bringing 5 guys out together and they don't get any playing time in an actual game, it seems like there was more rust than normal, some missed assignments. The rookie always needs some help, and it seemed like against Miami they were kind of learning, like, here's what he's going to need help on. Send Lael, Jonah Williams is the tackle on that side. Send Jonah Williams to give an extra shove into his lineman or something. But they got it figured out to where there were only 1 sack. So the first 3 games aside, now I'm hoping that wasn't just an aberration, having one good game. I hope that they got something clicking. Another issue, though, is the guys that they signed are all fantastic pass blockers. And when they finally got things going, like they did this last Sunday, it was great. But not even Lael Collins is really known for run blocking. And if you've paid attention to Mixon's stats, less than 3 yards a carry. Like they're protecting Joe Burrow finally, but opening up holes and getting that run shove is not happening. And that one I'm less optimistic about. I don't know if they're going to get that going much this year.
It's interesting to hear that they chose not to play any of those guys in the preseason and get that chemistry. You know, I don't necessarily think it was a bad option with how the league's been going with preseason games. The Ravens played basically no starters as well. But for that particular unit, for a unit that derives so much of their production based off of chemistry and the fact that it's all brand new, that is a curious choice, I'll admit.
Yeah, it was noticeable. So
yeah, that's almost one of the places I would maybe make an exception is because of it. Yeah, that's really an interesting choice. So yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that to see how you guys perform against the Ravens in this game because, like you said, it could be coming together. Maybe the second half of the season, second 3/4 will be much better for you guys.
Yeah, I think particularly when you're talking about run blocking, that'll be interesting to see if the Bengals try and use this as a matchup to get that on track. The Ravens, while they did have some better success this past Sunday, run defense has been a little more suspect than we've come to expect from this team. Combination of missed tackles, not getting in the right gap, and just, again, we've seen some improvement with it, and generally, not always, but generally, the Ravens historically have been able to keep Joe Mixon and the Bengals rushing attack in check. But I think that's certainly a matchup that is worth keeping an eye on, because if the Bengals are able to get that run game there to balance off the passing attack, it could lengthen drives and could cause some issues for the Ravens. I think that's something the Ravens are definitely going to want to make sure they key in there is making sure the Bengals don't get on track with the running game.
One question I had for you is I noticed that Sample is out. He has an injury. And I also noticed that you guys picked up off of waivers Devin Asiasi, tight end from the Patriots that was drafted in the 3rd round. And you also got the Ravens know well Hayden Hurst in the offseason. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this kind of revamped tight end group with the loss of Uzama and, obviously the injury to Sample and et cetera, and how they're looking this year. And maybe do you expect them to use much, 12 personnel, or is it really just 11 personnel and having Hayden Hurst out there more so?
Yeah, I was definitely sad to see Uzama go. He ended up with the Jets, but he just needed too much money for what the Bengals could offer compared to his production. He was like a great team leader personality wise. Hayden Hurst definitely isn't that, but Hurst can produce more, it seems, and he finally got his first touchdown this last week. I don't anticipate seeing a lot of 2 tight end passing sets though. Drew Sample was more of a blocking tight end. He would catch it on occasion. Ozzy, I like that pick because he seems like more of a receiving tight end, but he was in it. He actually didn't sign with the team till week 2 or 3, and he wasn't even active until this week. So that could be one of the changes that comes to try and get the deep ball is to get 2 tight end in receiving sets, just to throw in some confusion because that's not something that's typically run. Otherwise the tight end group, I wouldn't say that they're bottom of the league, but they weren't that exciting last year, aside from Uzama having a couple of good games. I was hoping it would be more electric this year with Hurst, but he also didn't play in the preseason and took some time to get going. So this is the game 5 here, big division matchup. With everything I've seen, it wouldn't surprise me if we get some more mixes into the passing game. It would just be something not seen yet this year.
Yeah, I am interested to see the matchup between the Ravens defense and Hayden Hurst. I'm sure even though the Hurst and the Ravens didn't leave on bad terms, I'm sure that will be excited to come back to M&T Bank Stadium and have a good game. I'm sure that would be something he would love to do. And the Ravens historically have had some issues with receiving tight ends, and while really we haven't seen this group yet, be tested with that in the first 4 weeks of the season. Played against teams that really don't have that much to speak of as far as the tight end's concerned. I guess, okay, so the Bills, Dawson Knox, they certainly are able to get him in some sets where he's able to be effective. And he did make a couple plays against the Ravens, but yeah, I don't think I'm expecting a huge game out of Hurst, but I could definitely see that being a wrinkle that the Bengals would try and use, especially considering that they were able to have, two of Uzama's biggest games of the season, probably of his career, were against the Ravens last year.
Mm-hmm.
Another question I had for you, I think this is kind of interesting. I had to go and look to see if he was injured or not, but Dax Hill has not been playing much, your first-round pick out of Michigan, safety. And I know that you guys were able to re-sign Bates, and maybe that was a little bit of a leverage play, but in Baltimore, we drafted Kyle Hamilton. We were expecting, a lot of 3 safety sets, and with mixed results, we're seeing they did a lot of that in the first 2 games, and the second 2 games, he's been a little bit in timeout, so to speak. He's still playing, but he's not playing nearly as much. He had some miscues, particularly in that Dolphins game. So I guess, what are your thoughts on the status of Dax Hill and
his
very limited snaps and the year so far?
I would say that most Bengals fans have been very perplexed. He's only played in a few snaps each game. We knew that, he was kind of drafted as insurance for Jesse Bates in case he got traded or didn't want to play on the franchise tag, but could also be the future role. He was worthy of a first-round draft pick, and then he got to play the whole preseason while Bates held out. And so when Bates, came back right before week 1, the general anticipation and what the coaches have said was, they were going to rotate in and out. There'd be a lot of 2 high safeties. But, that first game rolled around. Hill played 5 full snaps, and Bates got the lion's share of the work. People were wondering what was going on, and it's really nothing too out of the ordinary, nothing nefarious. Everything that it seems like from what the defensive coordinator said is they don't need him. They're getting all the right looks they want with Bates, and realistically, the defense has done really well through 4 games, and it was just Jesse Bates is part of the game plan. He's still the number 1 safety, and it turns out he's the only one we need on the field for the bulk of it, and they're just sticking with that, even though it does seem like a huge waste of talent, but it's worked out. So
interesting. Yeah, it sounds almost kind of similar to the Hamilton situation, but I'm sure we'll see more of both of them, within the coming weeks, if not closer to the end of the year. I would ask Justin, where for you, where's the strength of this year's defense on your side? Is it still probably the defensive line, or do you think the secondary is probably the strength of this team?
As a unit, I would still put it on the defensive line, especially Trey Hendrickson still just playing at the same level he was before. If I had to pick an individual player that's really made a difference, I would stick it on Logan Wilson, the linebacker. We might have talked about him a little bit last year. This is his 4th year coming out of Wyoming, and he had 4 interceptions last year, including the big one to seal the deal against the Titans in the divisional round. And he's playing. He's really stepping up his game. He had a big pick this year when he was running back into deep coverage, about 30 yards downfield for a big bulky linebacker. That's impressive. But he's still shooting the gaps as a run stopper. So he'd be, my individual MVP, far and away the best linebacker on the field, but the best unit is still the defensive line.
Yeah, now I heard DJ Reader, I think, was put on IR last week, I think. Who's taking over for him?
It is up front. They've got Josh Tupou, who's the one who concussed Tua on a legal hit, I should add, last Thursday. And he was practice squad part of last year. And then this year he ended up second string, and he's been a solid fill-in, even, as nose tackle. But it's, without DJ Reader, there's still a huge weakness up front.
One of the things that's really helped the Ravens defense early on in this season has just been turnovers. The Ravens have been able to generate a huge amount of turnovers to start out the season. Even last week helped them out to a hot start against Buffalo, but unfortunately just weren't able to capitalize on that quite enough. How have the Bengals been in that department so far this season? I mean, I know you guys were able to get a couple out of the Mitch Trubisky-led offense of Pittsburgh in Week 1. Is that an area that the Bengals are having some success in, or are you guys still waiting to get that part of the defense going?
It's been up and down with the rest of the team. 2 games of no turnovers and then 2 games of multiple turnovers. Last week against the Dolphins, each quarterback threw a pick. Against the Cowboys, they had a couple of fumble recoveries. It's the thing that I'm most disappointed about so far is the defensive line not getting enough sacks. I know those aren't turnovers necessarily, but aside from Trey Henderson getting 2 strip sacks against the Falcons, and then the sack against Tua, I think they got to Trubisky maybe once, which is super disappointing. And Cooper Rush didn't. He might have got sacked once. So the defense is still in the bend don't break mentality, which has worked out very well. But there is a certain lack of aggression that comes from not ball hawking as much as you should, and playing for the check downs, and then not blitzing or doing defensive line stunts as much as you should. So it all kind of goes into the overall where the defense is, which is good, but still playing conservatively and not getting the turnovers as much as we would like. But it could be there. It's not for lack of talent.
Yeah, the Bengals aren't too terrible. They're in the top half of the league when it comes over to turnover differential at +1. But you're right. They only have 7 sacks on the year after 4 games. And that's probably a big point of emphasis going into this week. The other thing I thought that was kind of interesting looking around and getting updated on the status of you guys is that Cam Taylor-Britt, your next highest drafted guy after Hill, he had that core muscle injury, had to get surgery, and kind of sidelined him for a while. Now, in the report I read, that it sounds like, now it's week 5, he's able to come back, and the coaching staff seemed like he might be able to. Do you actually expect that, considering the lack of preseason work and all? Or have you heard anything else about his injury and return timetable?
I think he put on enough of a pre-camp show that they know he could be good in the rotation. It's either this week or next week he should be activated off IR. I think it kind of depends on how some of the other roster situations shake out, but I would anticipate him on there and getting into the rotation, especially if Eli Apple needs a rest. I wouldn't mind if they wanted to throw Taylor-Britt in there to spell him, because no one likes Eli Apple, but he is good enough, or he was good enough prior to his surgery that he would be a good rotational player to get some reps. Not a starter, but definitely some snaps. So hopefully this week or next week.
What do you think is the ideal game flow for this team? Like, what if you looked in your crystal ball and you're looking at how the Bengals can come ahead with a win? What are your kind of keys to that matchup wise?
I would say an aggressive start for the offense. That was something that was lacking in the first 2 games, was any sort of urgency in the first half. Against the Jets, they won the coin toss and took the ball, which most teams defer these days, but they took the ball and they went right out and scored. And that was a big just momentum builder and something to at least, get the crowd into it as well. Know that, hey, we're not sleepwalking through it. And especially against the Ravens and the way Lamar Jackson can light it up. I think the big thing for the Bengals is getting a hot start and playing aggressively on offense. And defensively, bend don't break has been working. Lamar Jackson, last year not so much, but the year before, he was the one who got out there and was lighting things up. So I know the defense wants to probably clamp down more, similar to the first time the Ravens and Bengals played last year, where Jackson was held pretty much in check.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, I think the the bigger key for me, honestly, is how the Ravens are going to respond in almost the second half. I mean, I guess they've been down a little bit, but not that much. But it's like, it's funny you mentioned like the sleepwalking in the first half. That's us the entire second half of these games. The game against Miami, the game against Buffalo, just they get out to a hot start, but then it just totally flatlines. That for me, like, yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I guess trying to remember. Like, I don't know. Did you guys have any comebacks in terms of like coming back in the second half of anything like that? Is that something that the team has shown this year on the Bengals side, or
yeah? I think the big one was the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, going down by 18 to start off, and then holding them to 3 points in the second half. If you look at the box scores from this year, it's not as extreme, but they've been very good in the second half, holding Miami to just a field goal in the second half, holding the Jets to either one field goal or no points. Even the Steelers were held in check in the second half. So I think it's a trend for the defense being able to make adjustments, which is weird because, as I mentioned earlier, Bates is always on the field and not Dax Hill because they don't need to adjust for Bates. But yet, on the same hand, they've been very good at adjusting. And if you guys remember, I live in Kansas City, so I've had plenty of time to dunk on the Chiefs fans for the championship. That's So yeah, that's what I thought about that watching the Ravens with the come from behind oopsies, we'll call them. I thought, man, that kind of tracks with the Bengals defense. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm glad we asked you that question because, like, yeah, now it's like that's the fear for the Ravens. It's almost, I think the thing that's weird, Peter said in the last episode, I think it was so true. With the Bills game, even with the hot start, it was hard to get too confident about it because we saw what happened against the Dolphins, and not to disparage them, but I think everyone thinks the Bills are better, even though the Dolphins beat them. I think that's the scarier team in general. So I think it's valid to be afraid of the Bengals and the explosive offense that you guys can put on, and what we saw last year with Chase and obviously Higgins, and we know what Hurst can do, and Mixon's, he didn't forget how to run the ball. It's just maybe the line's not doing it right. Like, there's a lot of pieces there, and the defense that's able to adjust in the second half. We have to have a game plan where we're able to adjust as well and actually put together a full game if we expect to win this. So definitely interesting to hear that you guys are adjusting well, and it will not be an anomaly, most likely, if the Ravens are able to have a good second half that, like, maybe they figure something out. But yeah, I guess with that we can go ahead and start our predictions. Justin, do you want to start off as the guest?
Sure. So I'll throw out a score prediction first. So this is like my fifth time on the podcast. I think I picked the Ravens to win every time, even last. I'm going to keep up the trend. I'm going to say Ravens win. Ravens win 38-31. I'm
double checking on this now. This is hilarious. Is that actually the case that you always pick them? Oh yeah. Yep. That's what I'm seeing.
Spoken like a true Bengals fan.
It's true.
Oh man, I forget if I ever told you this story, but this is back 2019. So it was a home game against the Bengals, and you guys returned the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and I wasn't at my seat yet. I was walking into the gates, and on the big screen that they have behind the gates, I could see the play happening. And there was a group of Bengals fans behind. There was this guy behind me. He was like decked out in like a Joe Mixon jersey. He had the orange Bengals cowboy hat, orange glasses, and just like fully decked out, like super Bengals fan. And he was cheering on the kickoff return for a touchdown, as he should have. And so I just had to joke with him. I was just like, yeah, we had to spot you guys 7 in this game, and I just felt bad because he just looked dejected. He was just like, Yeah, you're probably right. We're probably not going to score again. Man, I was just trying to joke with you, dude. Oh, man. I did feel happy for you guys, though. I made a lot of my Ravens family and friends members upset by rooting for you guys in the Super Bowl. It was not the popular take in Baltimore, but I was just like, you guys got us that year, and I was like, come on. You guys win it some year when we're not in it. And I learned firsthand that the pain of being a Bengals fan, because that loss was tough for you guys, but
yeah.
But hey, you guys had an incredible season.
Oh yeah. Yep. Well worth it.
Well, I can say on my side, it took me a while. For at first, I was like, man, I don't want to root for the Bengals, but then they kept winning on those close games. I was like, all right, I can respect it.
I mean, you got caught up just as
root for them in the Super Bowl, though.
Okay. I like the energy, the underdog story. I mean, look, I'm wearing my Orioles shirt here. We didn't make the playoffs this year, but we finally have a winning record, first time since 2016. Like I like the underdog stories, and the Bengals. Yeah. It was exciting last year in the playoffs.
For sure.
I have to give it to the Bengals.
For sure. Well, I'll go ahead with my score prediction. Part of me, I didn't really expect to say this. Part of this is we're recording on Monday, so the loss to the Bills game is still fresh in my mind. Maybe if you ask me a little bit later, I'll feel better. I feel like this team needs some good juju. I think I'm going to try to reverse psychology this. I'm going to say the Bengals. I'm going to put it down. I'm going to put the Bengals win this game, close game, and I hope to God that it's wrong and I get the win. 20. I'll say 27-24 Bengals, and please let me be wrong. As for my bold prediction, what am I going to say? Dobbins gets his he had 2 touchdowns last week. It was amazing. What the heck? I'll say he gets 100 yards rushing. That would be pretty crazy.
I do think Dobbins is going to be huge this game. Obviously, he had a huge game to close out the 2020 season against the Bengals. This is a very different Bengals defense, so I'm not saying that Dobbins is going to have that huge a game, but I think at least having him in the fold to whatever capacity the Ravens will have him from a snap count perspective. It's something that the Ravens can use to balance things out, because they obviously didn't have running backs last year with everyone hurt. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting. And, I'm just going to be honest. I don't know what the heck is going to happen in this game. I think it's close. I think both teams are very similar right now in the fact that they've got some things going really well for them, others not. I'm going to, you know what?
Are you going to do the same?
No, I'm gonna do something here. I'm calling that the game 23-23.
Yes.
I just, this seems like such a Ravens Bengals thing to happen. It would be hilarious if it did, outside of the fact that that tie is never fun. But I think this game's going into overtime. I think it's going to be very close, and I'm going to put it down for the tie. My bold prediction is that the Ravens will not give up a passing touchdown in this game. I think they're going to, as they've done in the past in matchups where they got beaten one aspect of the game, overcommit to stopping the pass, which might leave some running lanes for Mixon.
All right. We've gone to chaos mode. We got Chris choosing against us. Peter is expecting a tie, which is fascinating given today's game rules and the quarterbacks available. So weird things are happening. I'm not going to keep up the streak, though. I'm going to start with my bold prediction, though. Bold prediction is that we've talked about Humphrey having a good start to the year. It's a redemption game against Chase. He also has a lot more help in the back end than he did years prior. I'm going to say Chase is held under 60 yards.
Oh, I didn't make a bold prediction, did I? I'll flip it. I'll say Chase gets a touchdown of at least 60 yards.
Oof.
One pass.
Wiping out Alex in one fell swoop. There it is.
In one whole play.
Oh, man. I will warn Alec, though, infamously last year at this time, going into the first matchup, I said that the Ravens would hold Chase to under 30 yards receiving, and
That was the biggest miss of all time, maybe.
It probably was. So we went through all my bold predictions. That probably was the worst one that I've done on this podcast. Oh, man. But this is going to be an exciting game. Sunday Night Football. Ravens will be at full strength. Bengals are going to be in there, too. It's going to be a great game. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, the early line is the Ravens favored by 3, over-under of 48 points. So, not using that to dilute my expectations. I had a score prediction picked out before then. I'm not going to go with my typical 31 points. That's a baloney one at this point. I think it's going to be a little lower scoring, despite the fact that it's a primetime game and the teams could have the theatrics. I'm going to say that the Ravens offense is frustrating again, and isn't able to really get on that roll. I'm going to say they only get 27 points in this game, and looking at the defense, it's going to be a push. I'm saying that the Ravens win, but by 3. Bengals 24. So what you got to do is wait to bet on the game, see if the line will shift. Might be a no bet right now.
So I downloaded one of the sports betting apps because they made it legal in Kansas. So I live on the Missouri side of Kansas City, but I work on the Kansas side. So when I go to work, the app works on my phone, and I can place bets while I'm at work. But then when I come home, it's no changes allowed because they geo fence it.
Yep, that's exactly what my situation was last year. I worked in Virginia, and it was legal, so I went to work, placed my bets, came home, and saw what happened. And Maryland's in this weird state. Apparently, it might happen soonish for the betting online. You can go to a casino and bet, but no one wants to do that. Everyone wants to, bet from their toilets. And apparently, the application was put in recently. There was some bureaucracy, and our governor was all proud of himself for getting it started. And I'm like, bro, we voted on this in literally 2020. Are you kidding me? It's 2022. Get your act together. Well, it's almost 2 years later, and we don't have it. So, I wouldn't be proud that they're finally making moves now.
Well, Missouri has the legal marijuana almost. Kansas has the legal betting. So, you got to just cross back and forth across state lines all day. No one can have everything.
And before we wrap up the show, do you want to share what you were talking about before the show started with your Super Bowl experience?
Yeah. I never thought that I would, see the Bengals in the Super Bowl. And I thought about going in person, but I just couldn't pull the trigger on $3,000 for a nosebleed seat. But my college roommate lives in LA these days, just a couple miles from the stadium. So I flew and spent the week with him. This was in February when gas was reasonable, so a round trip ticket was under $300, and just hanging out in LA for the week with the atmosphere. And even though it was a home game, I did home in quotes, for the Rams. There's not really an LA team, and they're all transplants. So it wasn't overwhelmingly LA. There were plenty of Bengals fans there, and it was just cool, just seeing the stadium even from the outside and being around just the busyness, and hey, my team's in the Super Bowl. And then the Bengals, throwing this out there on the side, got to break out their white helmets finally on Thursday night.
Nice.
And I was thinking, I was born 3 years after they put the tiger stripes on the helmet, and so this is the first new helmet I've ever seen in my entire life at age 38. So that's wild. You guys, you didn't even have a team back then.
Yep,
that's true.
Who did you root for before the Ravens came?
Oh man, town? So this is the part where we make you feel old. We're all three of us were born in '92.
Yeah, I'm an '84. I'm an '84 baby. So
yeah,
there's apparently
interestingly
photos of me in a certain Laurel team's uniform. Gosh.
Yeah, I think my parents had one of the more interesting stories. They rooted for the Seahawks of all teams. I forget the story behind that. It was because the what was the name of that quarterback at that time in the late 80s? Jim Zorn? Was that it? I think so.
Probably.
I don't know. I'll have to ask my dad why it was the Seahawks. Yeah, it was a big deal in Baltimore when they came. My father's father was a huge Baltimore Colts fan. He knew some of the Colts to some extent. I think he was either gambling or drinking buddies or something. They didn't like know him, but like they knew him as Slim or something like that. I don't know. He was on some name basis with like Johnny Unitas and Artie Donovan and those guys. But yeah, he was huge Baltimore sports fan, and unfortunately he got lung cancer, and he was supposed to go to the first home game for the Ravens in '96. He died a few days after it, too weak to go to the game. But we buried him with the ticket stub in his suit jacket for when that passed. But I don't know where I was going with that. But I don't know. You got me reminiscing when you're talking about what Baltimore did while we were without a team from '83 to '96.
Oh yeah.
Perfectly honest with you, I don't even know if my dad watched football or my parents watched football in between that period. My dad never was. He's a little bit of a Colts fan, although I think my grandmother was a lot more of a Colts fan. In fact, we took her to the first Bengals game last year. It was the first Ravens game she'd ever been to. She'd never been to the new stadium, but she went to Colts games at Memorial Stadium all the time. But my dad grew up watching the Orioles. He was a huge Orioles fan because he watched them in the 70s and the 80s when they were actually really good. So yeah, like I think he watched the Colts a little bit, but he's always sort of just been an Orioles fan. Although I can't say that he's like watched a ton of the Orioles this year. Like I don't even know if he knows anybody on the roster. He was, but yeah. So wait, so Justin, how do you feel? You have to tell us, how do you feel about the white helmets and like the all white uniforms and stuff?
I actually like them. There's technically white Bengal tigers in existence due to a genetic mutation. And as it turns out, if you're wondering why did they pick the name Bengal Tigers for the city of Cincinnati, it's because when Paul Brown was founding the team in '68, the big premier attraction at the Cincinnati Zoo was a rare white Bengal tiger. And so he went with that, but kept the traditional orange for the colors, as you would expect a tiger to be. And finally, after I think a lot of people wanted the white helmets when the NFL allowed two different helmets, in the before times, and that never happened. And finally, someone in PR realized that it would be popular. So
that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't think I actually ever thought about why the Bengals were named the Bengals, but I certainly didn't know that fact.
Yeah, get something to break out at parties now.
Yeah,
that's actually
true.
really cool. I thought the white jerseys and the white helmets looked cool. I thought it was a nice look. So kudos to that. And I'm curious. We'll see what they dress up. I think the Ravens are wearing black this game, if I recall correctly. I don't know if it's official, but it's prime time Sunday night. It would be inappropriate for them to wear black. They're all jersey, and I'm curious if you guys go all white, then it'd be kind of fun.
I'm trying to think. I know they're wearing the white helmets again this year, but I don't think it's this week.
Yeah, I'd expect you guys are probably going to only roll those out at home, I would think.
I'll have to check the schedule. It's a good question. I know they only get to wear them twice, though. So
yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. So probably
so you probably do that at home games.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't realize there was a count on it.
Yeah, because it's the no fun league. You can only
Yeah. You can
only have fun in certain situations for certain amounts of time.
Yeah. That's one of the best things about college football is some of the limited edition single game helmets that mean like one specific thing, but never in the NFL. So
well, that's cool. We'll see how well represented you guys are in Baltimore this year. The first two home games have had a lot of opposing fans showing up, at least in our area. So like lots of Dolphins fans, lots of Bills fans. I think that's a little bit to be expected in where we're sitting because they haven't sold out all the PSLs. But just in general, man, there were so many Bills fans in the Baltimore area all weekend long. It definitely felt like a little bit of a takeover. So we'll see what the Ravens are able to do. See if they can get the city back on track. I think this is going to be a pivotal game in the season. If it's a loss, I think the fan base will be in disarray, and we'll see if they're able to put it back together. And if it's a win, then, they'll find something else to complain about, I'm sure, but it'll be a little bit more optimistic. And if it's a tie, I don't know, man. It might be anarchy. But yeah, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Oh yeah, it's fun as always. I'm sure whenever we play again, I might be back, and it'll be completely different, like last year. Completely different between the first two games that we played.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. I know it's not that late in the year? Question mark? I forget, but we'll definitely reach out.
Cool, sounds good.
Well, thanks so much, guys, for listening. You can find us online, One Winning Pod on Twitter, and you can find us on YouTube if you search for One Winning Pod, and check out the Ravens History Corner. I don't know if Peter has a teaser for that one this week, or if you're still in the lab.
Yeah, we're going to look at, since we're looking at the Ravens trying to defend, getting swept by the Bengals last year, we're going to look at the top 5 times in Ravens history that they responded to a sweep from the previous season with a commanding win. So that's what we're going to be looking at this week.
Oh, very nice, very nice. You can find that on the YouTube channel, and you can email us, onewinningpod@gmail.com. Thanks so much for listening. Go Ravens.